And we are live. So, welcome back to the SEO Mastery Summit. This time around, we are joined by Adam Trainer from Outreach Mama, and we are going to talk about links today, Adam.
That's right, Matt.
So, first of all, awesome to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Actually, I can see that there's a problem with the live stream on Facebook right now. Sorry, I'm just, let me just check out what that is. Sorry, I'm just checking here what the issue is. Okay, so it looks like it have a problem streaming to Facebook. So just give me 1 minute here while we're
Sure.
We're getting people on, because we just need to change the link in our platform and see if we can get the YouTube one up. Always a bit fun with these live streams. Okay. Right, let's kick off, Adam. So we're going to talk about links, and more specifically, we're going to see link building in action. So I'm super excited to that. And yeah, hopefully I'll learn a little bit as well. So if you want to share your screen, Adam, then
Sure.
I'll let you take over for a little while. There we go. And you can just go ahead. That's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so today we're looking at outreach link building in action. So title of this presentation is how Outreach Mama used genuine outreach link building to rank 3 different sites for tens of thousands of keywords. So who are we? So outreachmama.com. Outreach Mama is a link building agency. We specialize in white hat link outreach campaigns. Basically, the foundation of our link building approach is outreach link building primarily through guest posts. We do also do some niche edits. We have a couple other options, but really our flagship services are outreach link building. We work with everyone from solo kind of digital marketers to small to large businesses. Everyone from like a single service provider looking to rank their services business to large brick and mortar e-commerce and services businesses with their own SEO teams that subcontract or link building to us. And we work with quite a few SEO agencies. Over our career, we built thousands and thousands of links for hundreds of SEO clients. We're up to a team of over 40 people now. We are located all over the world, but the majority of our links do come from the US, and our processes are really optimized for English-speaking websites. We really serve clients looking to rank kind of English-speaking websites primarily in the US. Today's agenda. So I'm going to give you an overview of our outreach processes. So exactly how we build links. And we're going to provide some real world examples of the results that we can get for clients. I think that one of the things that's really important to me to get across today is that one of the ways that Outreach Mama really tries to differentiate ourselves, really wants to be known, is that I think that one of the challenges that SEOs face is, unfortunately, SEO has kind of a negative reputation, especially with a lot of kind of like SEO naive business owners. Sometimes that's deserved, sometimes not. But what we really pride ourselves on is we are extremely transparent. I think that link building of all the things in SEO can be kind of particularly nebulous and sometimes has some negative connotations because there are people out there, executing shady link building practices. And we do everything above board. Everything we do is white hat. We're really doing real genuine outreach. We're not using PBNs. And I think that really sets us apart in a pretty crowded marketplace. You'll get to see throughout this presentation, we had some extra money in our marketing budget a year or two ago, and we ended up doing a photo shoot. And one of our team members had just had a litter of puppies. So we have a puppy photo shoot. You'll get to experience those images throughout. All right. So link building starts with a plan, right? So you'd never start building a house without some sort of blueprint or some idea of how big the house was going to be, right? But people do that when it comes to SEO and link building all the time. People come to us and say, well, I have a budget of, X, $3,000 a month. Is that good, right? And the answer is maybe, You know, maybe that's good, maybe it's not. Without having any sense of where it is we're trying to get to, it's impossible to answer that question. Maybe you're not spending enough, maybe you're spending too much. And so in order to figure out how to start any link building campaign, there's a few key questions we need to answer, right? So the first thing we understand is, what's your goal? What are you trying to achieve, or what is your client trying to achieve through ranking this website? And then given that goal, is SEO and our links the best answer? Is that the solution to the problem that you have? I'm giving another talk later this week, this Sunday, I think at 4 p.m. Eastern, where we do a really deep dive into how to think about link building ROI, to kind of get an idea of what kind of ROI can I expect from a link building campaign? How do I judge that? How do I measure that? Those are really important questions to answer and think about before you think about spending money on links or SEO in general, right? Some things to think about there: understanding which pages or keywords are really going to generate the ROI for your business, trying to get an idea of like how many links it's going to take to rank, right? Because if we have an idea of roughly how many links we need, then we can talk budget and time frame, which is critical, you know, for you, for your clients. So we make sure that everyone's on the same page and there's an alignment between expectations, reality, and everyone's happy, right? So assuming that SEO is the best approach and we have a link building plan, we have a rough idea, it's time to move into our SEO link strategy. So when we think about link strategies, there's a lot that goes into it, but where it starts with is an objective audit of your own site, right? So we need to look at, and I'm going to talk in terms of Ahrefs metrics because that's primarily what we use in-house. There's a lot of good, you know, SEO analytics software tools. I happen to think Ahrefs is one of the better ones. I'm going to talk in terms of Ahrefs, but that doesn't mean that Ahrefs is any kind of objective source of truth, right? So domain rank, your domain authority versus your competition. What's the authority gap? What's the authority gap of an individual URL? These are largely, but not always, determined by backlinks. Looking at your referring domain, kind of the number of referring domains, do follow referring domains, the distribution of those domains across sort of the URL rating. So what is the strength of your referring domain profile? What is the distribution of your referring domains in terms of relevancy? How relevant is the backlink profile you've built in terms of the keywords or topics you're trying to rank for? And then what does your anchor text distribution look like? What percentage of your anchor text is targeting specific keywords? How does that compare to the competition? And what do we need to do to bridge that gap, right? And then the corollary to that is looking at competitors, kind of asking a lot of those same questions, right? Looking at their domain rank, the URL rank of specific pages, analyzing their referring domains. Really the question we're trying to answer is, why are they ranking and we aren't, right? Is it an authority gap? Is it a content gap? Is there something else? And if it is an authority gap, that's where link building can really make a difference, and that's where we really come into play, right? So now we can put together a link plan, right? So the first thing is, link building is the #2 ranking factor in SEO, which is great. That means it's really important. It also means that there's a #1 ranking factor, and for the time being, that is definitely still content. And there's a lot that goes into that. You know, what I mean by that, broadly speaking, is that the content that you have needs to deserve to rank, right? It needs to accurately address what Google thinks the query intent behind any kind of search term is. It needs to be hierarchically organized in a way that makes sense to Google. So the first thing we're going to look at is, does your content actually deserve to rank? You know, what do we need to help you change on your site to make sure that we're sending links to an asset that's, you know, really going to move the needle? We want to come up with an initial target number of links to build. This is, I go a lot more in depth in the other lecture, but in a nutshell, we're essentially looking at, okay, how many referring domains are pointing to the root domain and the specific URL of the page we're trying to rank, right? That gives us a ballpark of the number of domains that we need to match. Now, all domains are not created equal, right? There's a exponential difference really in between domains of different authorities. So if we can get more domains with a higher authority, we may not need, you know, as high a volume, but we need something to ballpark, some place to start. We need to figure out what are the target pages we're going to send links to. This can be a mix of homepage, inner page, blog content. There's a lot of different reasons to send different kinds of links to different pages. We can talk a little bit more about that. We'll put together an anchor text roadmap. So kind of best practices in anchor text. So anchor text is the actual clickable text, right? If I have a link that goes from one website to another, it says click here is the anchor text. Now, Google uses that anchor text as a relevancy signal to figure out what the content that's being ranked to is about, right, or deserves to rank for. And once upon a time, it was best practice to just, spam a bunch of exact match anchor text. So to put your keyword in the anchor text and as many links as you could to the page you were trying to rank. Do not do that, right? So that used to be very effective. Because it was so effective, Google rolled out several kind of like algorithmic penalties that will devalue pages with over-optimized anchor text. Now, the solution to that in the SEO world has been to come up with a, quote unquote, natural anchor text profile. And, all the best practices you read are telling you to build a natural anchor text profile. But what the heck does that mean, right? It's a really big internet. All kinds of different sites are going to accumulate different anchor text ratios. And so instead of trying to hit some kind of arbitrary kind of magic, natural profile, what we do instead is we look at the industry and we look at the competition. So what we've seen is that anchor text distribution ratios will vary quite a bit by industry or the kind of site. And so we first do a map of whatever industry or kind of niche we're working in, or the type of site, e-commerce, info-based affiliate, that kind of thing, and match our anchor text profile based on kind of industry best practices. But then we get a lot more granular and actually look at what's actually ranking, right? Let's look at what's ranking on page 1, because Google is telling us that that's the anchor text that they like, for this keyword. And it can vary quite a bit from niche to niche, from keyword to keyword. And so what we do is we scrape the data from all the sites that are currently ranking, use that to get an average of the anchor text profile we want to match, and then build out an anchor text roadmap so that in the context of your existing anchor text library, by the time we build the initial target number of links we've decided we need to build, we've built out an anchor text profile that matches what's currently ranking on Google. And then once we have all these pieces in place, we can come up with a time frame that is really dictated, kind of by budget and where a site's starting. You can't suddenly send hundreds and hundreds of links to a brand new site. Sometimes you have to ramp up more slowly, or more often there are real world constraints of budget, in which case we have to prioritize, okay, how many links can we actually send in a given month, and which pages are we going to prioritize? So once we have a link plan, we know exactly what we're going to do, how many links we need to build, we have an anchor text roadmap, it's time to go out and get the links, right? And so like I said, our primary link building strategy is white hat outreach guest post link building. We can break this down into a few different steps. There's prospecting and pipeline building. There's the initial outreach phase, follow-up and negotiation, article creation, and then finalizing the link publication. And I'll walk you briefly through exactly how we tackle each of those. So prospecting and pipeline building, to be honest, I think is the real secret sauce of effective kind of scalable white hat link building. This is hard. It's hard to do well. This is something we really work to dial in. And I think that this is critical, a really critical stage, if you're trying to actually build an effective outreach campaign. There are a ton of different software tools you could use. These are some that we either currently use or have used in the past. Actually, recently we switched from using kind of a Hunter quick mail combo to using, I actually don't know if it's pronounced Snove.io or Snovio. I'm not sure how they say it, but that's actually saved us a ton of money. Snove or Snovio gives us a lot of the features of those two tools combined, and a few more. So something I'd personally recommend checking out. But there's a ton of different options. You can use Pitchbox. It's a pretty expensive kind of outreach CRM. There's a lot of different software tools. The point is, you need to figure out a software stack that works, that makes sense. And essentially what we're doing here is trying to figure out what is the universe of sites that are going to be relevant for your niche, the keywords we're trying to rank, that are actually viable, real outreach targets, real websites that we can get contact information that we can reach out to. The way that we create this seed list, there's a lot of different things we do. We basically, we'll always start with your competition, right? So we've done a link audit on your site and all the competitor sites. We've seen what that gap looks like. And so the first and easiest thing to do is say, well, let's look at what kind of links do your competitors have and how can we see about replicating those same links. We will kind of work backwards through competitors to find new competitors, to really identify everyone that's in your space, scrape all of their link profiles. And then we'll move on to thinking about what niches we're trying to target. So, if you have a website you're trying to rank in the education niche, that means we're looking at sites in, education, schools, probably parenting, children, mom blogs, families. So there's all kinds of different niches that are going to be hyper relevant to your education niche. And so we'll go niche by niche and we'll comb through tools like Ahrefs Content Explorer. We'll use Keyword Explorer, a few different other tools to basically build out a massive list of every possible site that we think is a good relevant fit for your outreach campaign. And then we go through several layers of kind of vetting and scraping. The first few are more automated, right? Where we're kind of doing metric-based checks. Again, this is something I go into more in depth in the other call, but there's a few metrics, we definitely look at. We pay attention to things like domain authority, domain rank, trust flow, citation flow, the number of outbound links the site has, things like that to make sure that sites are kind of meeting certain minimum standards from a metric perspective. Sites that make it through that, obviously we have to make sure that we can find contact information. So it's another kind of important scrape. Sites that make it through those steps then go through our manual review processes because, like I said, it's a big internet, and unfortunately, there's plenty of sites that have good-looking metrics that, once you get a look at them, are clearly PBNs or not real websites. And so, we do a manual review to make sure that sites pass both our metric check and kind of our smell test that these are real websites. And we won't move forward with any link building campaign until we have a sufficiently large pipeline to guarantee that we can fulfill all the links that we've agreed to for whatever that campaign looks like. Once we have our prospect list, we move forward into the initial outreach phase. So for the initial outreach phase, we develop pitch scripts. So we certainly have any number of scripts in-house that we've been using for a while. We're always tweaking them. And whenever we start a new outreach campaign, we somewhat go back to the drawing board because we have an idea, we know what works, but we want to look at this specific niche, this industry. We want to research the people we're talking to make these as personalized as possible. Some really important points about outreach. A lot of people are terrible at outreach, right? Everyone's using kind of like Brian Dean's templates. If you own or manage any kind of website with decent rankings or traffic, you're probably getting inundated with outreach emails all the time. I manage several websites. I know I'm constantly getting outreach emails, and like so many things, right? Link building, like marketing, is it's a lot like dating, right? Like you would never walk up to a stranger in the street and ask them to marry you, right? Both because you would seem like an insane person, but you would also have an incredibly low success rate, right? And how many emails do we all get that say, hey, I'm blah, 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 nice to meet you, why don't you give me a link, right? And that's essentially meeting someone on the street and saying, hey, nice to meet you, why don't you marry me, right? Instead, why don't you ask them out for coffee, right? Why don't you give them a gift, something like that. So we really focus on giving before we ask, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that. What this really comes down to is we're really trying to build real, authentic relationships with people. So when we reach out to someone, it's not, hey, I love your, website.com, obvious template. By the way, I have this post, why don't you link to it? Because that's just asking for something without offering anything, without building a relationship. And so often these initial outreach emails, we will just do relationship building. We manage a large number of kind of content websites in-house. So a really popular tactic we have is like sort of like an ego bait, where we offer to feature them in a roundup without even asking for anything, right? So, hey, love what you're doing. You have a great website. You guys are awesome. We're doing this roundup post about exactly what you guys talk about. We'd love to feature you. Are you interested, right? And that's the first step. We've given them something. We've built a relationship, and then we can kind of continue communicating and eventually hopefully get a link out of it. And then really important is you have to have a plan in place to follow up. You can send a million outreach emails, but if you're not following up, if you're not, tracking people down, you're gonna have very low conversion rates. So it's really important to have a clear kind of follow-up plan in place. What that looks like on our end, we'll send on average about 4 to 5 follow-up emails. We are always tweaking the copy, the subject. Like we've been saying, everyone is always inundated with all these outreach emails. So what we're really trying to do is kind of break through this inbox blindness. And so we're always testing to see which subjects are getting opened, which copy is converting. And so we're always conducting iterative testing of all our campaigns, both new and existing. So we have clients we've been working with for years, and we're still running, ongoing iterative testing of their outreach campaigns because we're always trying to get better. Once we establish that someone is interested in working with us, then we'll try to negotiate a guest post or an image edit. If they're not interested in linking to us, that's fine, right? We're happy to kind of build that relationship in the hopes that, maybe we will get something from them in the future and there will be more opportunity there, right? These are long-term relationships that we're looking to build for the long run. Some of the important things to negotiate when you're negotiating these guest posts is you want to make sure that the link you're getting is do follow, that it's not going to be marked as sponsored. We push really hard to get at least one internal link from the website we're getting the guest post on so that we don't have any orphan pages. This helps your page get, or your new guest post rather, get indexed more quickly or at all, and passes more link equity from the main site. If we're not able to negotiate an internal link, that's when we would maybe recommend sending 1 or 2 tier 2 links to that page to help it get indexed, basically. There's more things to negotiate there, but those are examples of some of the important things we want to get settled up front. Once we have negotiated that we are actually going to be able to get a guest post, we go through the article creation process. So at Outreach Mama, we have a pretty big team of in-house writers and editors with a lot of trained SEO content experience. And our real focus is on relevance, right? So we want to make sure everything from the title, like what the article is about, to the H2s we're using, to the language around the link, to the anchor text, is hyper relevant for the topic, the keyword, everything we're trying to rank for. We want to do everything we can to send relevancy signals to Google, and we really focus on doing that heavily through the articles. Once we have the article published, the final step on our end from the link publication is reporting it. So everything we do is reported in a real-time kind of like a Google spreadsheet. It's like a shared project management document that's client-facing. And we are super transparent. We put all the links we're working on in real time. You see exactly what the URLs are. You see what we're negotiating, what we've published, what we're looking at prospecting. So again, we're super transparent. We want you to see these are real websites, real links. We share all the metrics. And then really important to us, just like we're building long-term relationships with these different website owners, we want to build long-term relationships with our customers as well, right? So I think that there are plenty of link building agencies out there that, just want to get your money and will give you whatever kind of product they have, and they don't care if you're happy or not. It matters to us very much that you are happy with our services. So we guarantee all of our links, right? If we build a link and you're not happy with it, we'll replace it with a link that you do. And then we'll also replace any links we build if they get taken down by the webmaster. This isn't because, we have like a PBN where links are taken down because we stopped working together. It's more that these are real websites that we have no control over, right? Sometimes domain registrations expire, right? Sometimes people take pages down. And if your link comes down for any reason, we will replace it. So that's our process, right? It's not rocket science. It's simple. It's not easy. It's taken us a lot of work to really dial in these services. And we're very proud of the output we're able to create. So let's look at some specific examples of exactly how we use these processes and the different results we were able to get for a few different kinds of websites. So the first website is an e-commerce business in the home appliance niche. We've been working with these guys since June of 2018. In that time, we built a little over 500 links for them. Their starting domain authority was 28. Their current domain authority is 24. That's a huge jump. Really happy with those results. In terms of current keyword stats, they're ranking for over 4,500 top 3 keywords, over 7,000 on first page of Google, over 33,000 tracked keywords. Ahrefs places their current traffic value at $175,000. Traffic value in terms of Ahrefs is essentially their estimation of what you would pay in PPC to get that traffic. So in theory, the rough value of this SEO campaign is worth $175,000 a month, or the value of this SEO traffic. So what are the specific things we did for this company? So what we noticed is that there was a huge authority gap between this site and the competition. A lot of times I'll use the analogy of a carnival ride that has both a minimum height requirement and requires a certain number of tickets, right? So the minimum height requirement is your overall domain authority. So one of the first things we look at is we want to look at the SERPs, see who's currently ranking, and see what their domain authority looks like relative to the site we're targeting. If we're looking at some SERPs and the domain authorities are all 80, 90, really big media brands, that's going to be a really tough keyword to compete for. And we need to recognize that we're looking at either a really heavy lift, right? We're probably going to have to build hundreds, maybe even thousands of links, and it might take months or even years to rank. Or we need to adjust our strategy and go find some keywords that have a domain authority closer to our own. In any case, we identify a domain authority that we think we can match or compete with, and that's our minimum height requirement, right? And generally, the way that we found to be most effective to build that domain authority is essentially just building authoritative links, mostly to your homepage. That's been incredibly effective. We typically start there for most clients, unless they already have pretty substantial domain authority. And you can see pretty impressive rankings improvement just from building homepage links. And I almost say, you know, start there, do that until it stops working, and then you can start thinking about interpage links. So interpage links would be more like the number of tickets you need to get in a ride, right? So we need to have a minimum domain authority to kind of compete with the authority of the other websites on there. But then assuming that domain authorities are roughly equal, what it often comes down to next is the authority of that specific page. That's your URL authority. And we overcome that by building links directly to the interpages and by building topical relevancy in a few different ways. So for these guys, they had a huge authority gap. So we needed to build a ton of homepage links. They were also going to need a lot of interpage links over time because they're competing against some very aggressive, you know, pretty high volume keywords. All these sites we're looking at, we're going after really big fish. So that's why kind of the link numbers and the length of time are so long. Another challenge these guys had is that they basically had an exact match domain name. And what I mean by that is that their domain name basically exactly matched the keyword that they were trying to rank for, right? So if I had a website that was trying to sell water bottles, an exact match domain name would be like www.bestwaterbottles.com, right? Once upon a time, that was kind of advantageous. Google sort of preferentially ranked kind of exact match domain names. Now it's not really an advantage in the same way. It can still help sometimes, but it can also hurt you, particularly when it comes to anchor text. Because one of the problems is, one of the things that we recommend that you absolutely should do is you should build a lot of homepage links using your brand name as the anchor text, right? Because this helps build that domain authority we were talking about. It helps establish you as a brand in Google. And Google, especially in the last year or two, is really preferentially ranking brands. So it's very beneficial in general to build a ton of homepage links with branded anchor text. However, if your domain name or your brand name very closely matches the keywords you're trying to target, it's very easy to over-optimize your anchor text. That's the case where when you build a bunch of branded keywords, you're accidentally creating a ton of anchor text that is directly targeting your given keyword, right? So what we had to do in this case was actually expand their kind of anchor text strategy so that instead of doing the typical branded homepage links, we were getting creative with the specific anchor text we were using for their homepage and really trying to build out their anchor text profile for different keywords. So kind of like de-optimizing the homepage keyword and expanding the optimization for other keywords. We also expanded their content strategy. So this goes back to what I was saying a second ago. So when it comes to bridging that gap on URL authority, it's a combination of links and content, right? What we need to tell Google is both, this is a really good resource for this topic and here's why, and other sites trust us to do this and here's why, right? And the other sites trusting us is the links. But the way that we tell Google that we are a good, relevant source for a topic is often by building out kind of a content silo around the different topics that Google seems to think are related to the keyword we're trying to rank for. So we help them expand their content strategy, create a lot of kind of blog content, these content silos that explored all these different kind of info-based keywords that were related to product-based keywords, that we could create these interlinking silos where they have the hyper-relevant blog content, links back to the services pages, vice versa. So when we're building links throughout this whole ecosystem, right? So we're helping to rank their blog content, which is info-based, pretty high search volume, which in turn gets actual eyeballs and traffic on their services content. It builds relevancy and domain authority for the services content. And it's basically a win-win. Another important thing we did here is because we knew this was going to be such a heavy lift and they hadn't really invested a lot in SEO before, we wanted to try to identify some quick wins, right? So we identified some profitable long tail keywords. So from the spectrum of kind of short tail to long tail. So back to that water bottle example. So best water bottles would be a short tail keyword. It's exactly what we're trying to rank for. It's a money keyword. It shows buying intent. Great keyword to own, right? Going to be tough because it's very competitive. A longer tail keyword is a keyword with more modifiers in it that's very specific that can still be very valuable because of its specificity, but probably has lower search volume and as such is less competitive. So we go from best water bottles, it might be, you know, best insulated water bottles for use at soccer games, right? Would be a longer tail keyword, very specific, desirable traffic. Those are keywords we can win pretty quickly. And the revenue that those keywords generate gives us more money to fund the SEO budget, which helps us target bigger fish, basically. In terms of how we thought about outreach targets or what niches to target for this particular brand, we targeted home improvement sites, interior design, real estate companies, homemaker blogs. There were several other categories, but these are just examples to kind of help you think about when you're trying to build topical relevance, you really want to think, okay, so what is the specific narrow category that this site falls into? Let's exhaust all those opportunities. But then we also need to expand our thinking to what kind of related niches or categories are also going to really pass relevance on in a way that's meaningful for Google. So with this strategy, what kind of results were we able to achieve? So I stuck the bar there right when we started working together. And you'll see it took some time, but traffic and keywords eventually both really took off. I know that these movements don't look extreme, but realize that the y-axis here is pretty large. So although this slope seems relatively shallow, this is actually huge gains. I know that Ahrefs is not like the source of truth necessarily for traffic, but these are good kind of directional indicators that we can use to compare movement over time. Okay. The next site is in the home security niche. They basically sell different kinds of home security, kind of smart home gadgets, and then they do like a affiliate kind of component where they review different services and make money by referrals. So we began working with these guys in January of 2019. So far, we've built a little over 200 links. This is a good kind of contrast to the previous case because their domain authority to start was already quite high, right? So they had a DR in the 50s. Current DR is 56. I think while we've been working together, it's been as high as 60. It's currently sitting at about 56. Their keyword stats, right? So almost 5,000 first three rankings, almost 7,000 on the first page, and over 55,000, currently tracked. Ahrefs puts their current traffic value at a little over $100,000. So with these guys, they had a strong domain authority to start, right? So we didn't have to worry as much about building domain authority, but they still weren't ranking, and we had to figure out why. And it turns out that in their case, it was less of an authority gap and more of a relevancy gap, right? So most of their revenue came from a couple main services pages, which was great, and they had a ton of product pages, but they didn't really have a lot of good topical relevancy around the topics they were trying to rank for. So what we had to help them do was establish that relevancy. So we built, same thing as we were talking about last time, we helped them build out these kind of content silos to build topical relevance around the services keyword. We interlinked those content silos. We linked them back to the category pages. And then we started building links, both to the main services pages because they are in very competitive niches, but then also building a ton of links to these kind of content silos. This improved their site relevancy and really paid big dividends. Another challenge that these guys faced is that their anchor text was heavily under-optimized, right? So their anchor text was all over the map. There really wasn't any kind of anchor text concentration. So in this case, we saw that some of their competitors actually had pretty aggressive anchor text profiles that were currently ranking. And so what we did is built out an anchor text roadmap based on all these links that we were building, designed to match that more aggressive anchor text profile that their competitors were using. And that absolutely paid dividends. In terms of what we established for outreach targets for these guys, so home security is their main niche. There was plenty of sites there. We also expanded into different kinds of tech news, home improvement, real estate, home and garden sites, kind of design, and we had no shortage of outreach targets. In terms of what we were able to do for these guys, the results are a little bit less dramatic, but again, look at that y-axis. These still pretty big numbers in terms of overall movement. And what's really encouraging, so a lot of times people will ask is, so our guest posts on average will range in authority from say DR 20 to 70. And some people will ask, well, how far can I really get with these guest posts? And this is a great example to show, even if you have a very authoritative site with a DR in the 50s, our tactics are still very effective. It can still kind of grow your traffic and your keyword rankings considerably. Another important thing to note, this graph, the last graph, the third website I'm going to show you, is we are talking campaigns that spanned multiple years. And there have been multiple Google updates over that time. And none of our client sites have ever taken a major hit from a Google update due to any kind of algorithmic penalty against links, right? Because we are building real white hat outreach links that Google likes. And that's really important. Especially, if you're building an agency, thinking about selling links to your clients, you want to have links that you can trust in. They're going to stand the test of time. And we believe that this is the best way to do that. Okay. Last but not least, this is a company in the rental apartment finder niche. Essentially, they, massive database, review different apartments and get affiliate commissions when people, book sales of different apartment companies. We began working with these guys in November of 2018. We built a little over 200 links for them to date. Their starting domain rank was in the low 30s. They're currently sitting at 40. Their keyword stats, so I mean, they have a great kind of volume of keywords to target. So they have over 10,000 keywords, currently ranking in the top 3 positions, 35,000 on the first page of Google, and over 90,000 currently tracked by Ahrefs. Ahrefs puts their current traffic value at almost $400,000. So strategy overview for these guys, this was more similar to the first example we looked at. So again, there was a huge authority gap. So we had to build lots and lots of homepage links. Their site already had a very good kind of hierarchical structure, and their pages get very granular because it's like apartment rentals. And so they have kind of like their main category services page, and then there's going to be a ton of sub pages under those. So it would be, you know, like website / city name / you know, neighborhood. And one city might have, you know, 10 different neighborhoods. So there was a lot of, they had a ton of inner pages basically. And what we saw at first, to be honest, was just through building the homepage links, major traction across all their inner pages. So we maintained that homepage link building. Once that kind of started to plateau in terms of gains, we were able to allocate more of their budget to those inner services pages. We started by targeting those main category pages because that has trickle down benefits for the sub pages under those. And then we also build links specifically to those specific category pages. And in that case, for these guys, because it's like a local services niche, we were focusing on getting links that were as locally relevant as possible. So this wasn't a local SEO campaign per se, but we did focus on getting links from local sites, which we find can really move the needle for businesses like these. In terms of outreach targets, we targeted real estate companies, a lot of like local media, finance, local lifestyle blogs, moving, really looking for that kind of sweet spot where we have the Venn diagram of an overlap between sites that are going to be very topically relevant and sites that are going to show geographic relevance to Google. And those were very effective for us. So in terms of results, we were able to see, we started again in November 2018, and you'll see very substantial gains. Again, look at the y-axis, very substantial gains in traffic and keywords, just from these very simple, straightforward link building strategies, which we find to be highly effective and repeatable. You know, we use them over and over again. We put a special offer together for everyone that's attending the SEO Mastery Summit. If you visit outreachmama.com/SEO Mastery, you'll see a collection of offers we put together for you guys. So I'm opening up my calendar. I'm offering a free 15-minute strategy call. These are going to fill up really quick. So, you know, once I'm booked out, they're done, but definitely take advantage of this while making it available. We're offering 10% off all of our guest post links. So I should explain, basically, because we've been doing this for so long, we kind of have 2 buckets of services, right? We have a huge inventory of websites with which we already have relationships, and we can kind of build links on those sites for you right away. That's what we call our guest posts from our existing connections. The only lead time is really however long it takes for us to kind of create the articles. Really the only downside to that service is, you know, for any given niche, we're only going to have so many, you know, topically relevant links. But we're literally able to provide you like a menu of websites and say, hey, look at this menu of sites. You know, are these sites you'd like link from or not? And then our other main service is our custom outreach. So for custom outreach, we're actually doing everything we just talked about. We're doing a complete campaign, soup to nuts, where we're building links brand new for you and your site. You know, these will give you a real competitive advantage. These are really hard to get links that your competitors are going to have a hard time replicating. And if you sign up for our custom outreach service, if you buy 3 months of custom outreach, we're giving 1 month of links free, you know, at whatever volume of links that you've purchased. So pretty good deal, worth checking out. And with that, I'm happy to open things up to questions. I'm sure you guys have some. I'm happy to answer anything about our services, how we work, or link building in general.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Adam. So the first question here was from Adventure Writer. So to get these traffic stats, what kind of money did they spend, and roughly how many links are we talking month or overall extracts?
Et cetera, probably. So yeah, great question. So link prices vary. I would say, like with a custom outreach campaign, an average link is going to cost about $200, $230. It can vary quite a bit. You know, with our guest posts from existing connections, pretty similar range. They're usually a little bit less expensive. And then for the companies that we were looking at, I think on the low end, we were building like 5 links per month, and on the high end, about 13 links per month. So again, this is, doesn't have to be huge numbers on a monthly basis. It's about recognizing that this is a really long-term strategy. Links take a long time to take effect. and you need to consistently build them over time and keep building them, because you got to realize your competitors are building links as well, right? So it's not like you can go out and do a 6-month link building blitz and be like, okay, I rank now, right? I'm good forever. You need to kind of keep maintaining that moat to help you maintain your ranking.
Yeah, obviously, again, depending on what niche you're in and so on, right? I mean, so we have had some sites where, building a few links originally kind of was enough because there wasn't any competitors in the niche. But typically, it's not just a question of how much should you build. It's a question of you need to kind of look at your competitors and build more than they do, or at least the same, right?
Totally agree. Yeah. So the context of sites we're talking about are all like huge sites targeting like extremely competitive keywords, right? If you've identified a universe of keywords that are less competitive, you probably can get away with just building a handful of links, stopping and seeing. I'm a big believer in exactly what you said, Matt. Look at what your competitors are doing and match that.
The next question is, have you never walked up to someone and asked them to marry you? Question mark. So
I have. I've yet to be successful.
Okay, fair enough. So Dave here saying, recently I used a new tactic. Instead of asking for a guest post, I message people and say, I would love to be part of your next article, with a link. So basically he's saying he was doing niche edit for a while, but he got too many of those. So now he's basically asking people, basically saying, I would love to be part of your next article, ... And he's basically saying that saves him from spending money on writing guest post, and also the content doesn't look like guest post, because he says his biggest concern is that guest posts are very easily detectable, and it's often a very different language from the regular posts on the site and so on. Is that an approach you have tried before?
Certainly, yeah. We whenever we can get away without writing content, we want to, right? Because it saves everybody money. There are advantages to having control over the content, because from everything we were discussing from like a relevancy perspective, it's really nice to have that control. But if you're able to negotiate either a niche edit or placement of new content, sure. And to back to the negotiation process, we prefer guest posts because that's what works for us, but that doesn't mean we're not going to negotiate for other alternatives.
Cool. Thank you very much, Aventuritis. And if anyone else have questions, so again, you can ask both in the live streams and you can also ask on the platforms. So I want to just quickly apologize again. Facebook have not been behaving well today, so the live stream in Facebook isn't working, but on the platform it should be working, and on YouTube and so on, LinkedIn. So keep asking questions. So the next question here is for inner page links. I have focused on homepage links, but on my key money page, I've currently got 50 links directly to it. However, my competitors in the top 3 spots have between 200 and 350. Should I really go and buy 200 links directly to my money page to match the competitors?
It's a great question. So like everything in SEO, it depends, right? The first thing to figure out is what's the value to you of this money page. So if you were able to rank in the top 3, how much traffic could you expect to get? And at what rate does that traffic convert, and what revenue is that going to create for you? That's the first place to start, because if the answer is not much, then there's no way you should go out and build 150, 200 links, right? Because it's a huge investment. If the answer is a lot, then maybe. Remember that links are part of the answer, they're not the whole answer. So the first thing you have to look at are what else is different between you and those competitor sites. Is there remember we talked about the minimum height requirement and the number of tickets. So you're talking about the number of tickets, right? So they have a lot more tickets than you do. Should I go out and buy that many tickets? Depends how tall you are, right? So if your domain authority is not high enough, I would focus on that first. And then is there a relevance gap? Does the content you're trying to rank deserve to rank? And is there a relevance gap between you and your competitors? I would say if you've addressed the authority gap and you address the relevance gap, and the kind of website you have is a good fit for what Google wants to rank for that keyword, then it goes back to that ROI question. And if it's worth it from an ROI perspective, then yeah, maybe.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Then do you have experience in the transport industry?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we work with sites, and there's few industries I can think of that we don't work in. Some sites are harder to get outreach in than others. for like automotive, for some reason, is really hard to get people to give you outreach links. We do at this point have a pretty large database of automotive sites, but there can be a lot of trial and error. And that goes back to whenever we approach a new industry or a new niche, we know what's worked in the past, but we always start with kind of a blank slate and don't make any assumptions and figure out what's going to work for any given niche or industry.
Yeah. And there's a question here from John. What is a good target for the minimum amount of backlinks to build when you're starting a brand new site?
Depends on what's currently ranking and what you want to rank for, right?
There's no kind of minimum, like when you start a new site, you build minimum 20 or
some
50.
site, I mean, if you're targeting like a brand new keyword, you might be able to rank without any links. You know what I mean? If you were the first person to talk about a topic, you don't necessarily need links. So it really depends on what the Google landscape looks like. So what I would say is use tools like Ahrefs, SEMrush, to get an understanding of the current profile of sites that are ranking for the keyword you want to rank for, and that will give you a rough idea of how many backlinks you'll need to think about building.
The universal SEO answer, it depends.
That's right, it depends.
How do you go about getting the internal links to new page? So basically, how do you get around?
How do we get the internal
links? Yeah, what do you do? What do you say to people to do that?
Sure. So A, we ask for it, right? If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. And B, we make it as easy as possible. So we will suggest, we'll say like, hey, would you mind like linking to this like from your homepage? Because that's very desirable from like a link equity perspective. But then we might also identify relevant like blog posts or other pages on our website that make sense and give a suggestion and say, hey, this article is like a great fit for this article, and it's about pitching it. We're not trying to get them to do this for us, right? We're trying to get them to do it to make their website work better. And so we try and pitch it from the perspective of, hey, this topic actually relates really closely to this topic. I think your audience would really appreciate being able to identify, this connection, and Google likes that too. Might be worth considering, that kind of thing.
So one of the things we focus on a lot, and I see most guest post people not do this, but we really focus on targeting a specific keyword and not just like writing content that's relevant, but we actually do keyword research and trying to find a really easy to target keyword. And what we typically do when we send the article back, one, we would often have 1 or 2 internal links to other pages on their site. And 2, we say, hey, this is a keyword that's relatively easy to rank for. If you internal link from these 2 pages, it's very likely that the page will rank quickly. So we basically try and build them an incentive to say, this page will help you generate more traffic if you build these 1 or 2 internal links. So that's what we have found to work really well.
Yeah, that's a great insight, Matt. And that goes back to the idea of like adding value. Like we want to give them something before we ask. And so when we approach, we actually often take a similar approach. When we present a new guest post, we'll pitch it from the perspective of, here's some things your competitors are ranking for. We found a good keyword we think you could rank for. Let us help you rank for it. That kind of thing. Yeah,
and I mean, I obviously own a host of sites, and we get so many guest post pitches and so on, right? And so often it's just that they're targeting the exact same keyword as their money post. And while that kind of sometimes makes sense, the problem is that it's often not anywhere near as great post, and it will never rank anywhere. So even though the relevance is very key, again, my experience is if you have a post that gets no traffic or very minimal traffic, the value of that link is not as great as compared to if you have a post that actually end up getting traffic, right? So from a guest post perspective, if you are doing guest post, I highly recommend that you actually just spend a few minutes just doing some keyword research and trying to find a keyword that actually is rankable, right? Cool. I got websites with many languages. Do you provide service only in English?
Yeah, really our processes are optimized for English language websites.
So I would say, we run a number of sites in other languages as well. And I would say we definitely love using English links to other languages as well. English links are often easier to get. I would say the only but I would put in, so one is we usually use it to the homepage and as a brand link. And obviously, if you have 100 links, you don't want 80 of them to be English. So we typically do maybe 25% English links to foreign sites. But we find they work just as well as long as the topic is relevant and so on. Google does know how to translate a little bit. So that's good. So what's a reasonable average cost of a link?
Really depends on the link quality, right? So you can get really cheap like PBN or low quality links for really short money. I would say like most outreach vendors that I've seen that are doing real outreach, probably about $200 a link is realistic.
Right. Okay. Okay. The next one here. So that one you already answered.
Watch out for link rentals as well, right? So there are companies that will maybe charge you a smaller dollar amount, but it's like a monthly fee. That's like a big red flag that they're just selling you a PBN link. And you can probably expect that when you take down or when you stop paying that monthly subscription fee, that link's going to disappear.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, like it makes sense if you know what you're going into, if you know why you're buying it. Again, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's you just need to be aware it's a different kind of link, right?
Right.
So, okay, so this one here, Jonathan, from a link perspective, what are some red flags to look out for when you're buying links?
It's a good question. So there's a few. So anybody making guarantees, anybody who promises you, if you just give me X amount of money, I guarantee you're going to get X rankings, right? Because no one can guarantee anything. Google is a black box, and we are extrapolating what we think it wants based on a lot of trial and error. So anyone who's making any kind of guarantees is immediately lying to you, right? So I'd watch out for that. Anything that is too good to be true. So if someone's promising they can get you, DR90 links and it's going to cost you $10, probably not the case, right? So too good to be true, making guarantees. I would look at trust flow and citation flow. So if there is a big gap between, so these are kind of old metrics from Moz, but essentially they're measurements of how trustworthy a site is and how strong or powerful the site is. The citation flow is a measure of the strength of the referring domains, and the trust flow is a measure of kind of like the trustworthiness in terms of spam score of the referring domain. And you don't want a trust flow to citation flow ratio greater than kind of like 1/2. If it's way out of whack, that's a good indication that it's a very powerful site, but maybe not very trustworthy. I would look out for websites that have a ton of outbound links. There's not like a hard rule about this, but once you look at a lot of websites, you can kind of get a feel for it. And if they have what seem like an unnaturally large number of outbound links, that's a good indication it's a link farm. And so that A, means that it's not going to pass a ton of link equity because their link equity is dispersed across from the other sites. And B, the strong chance they're going to get penalized by Google eventually. Those would be some of the immediate red flags I would think of. You can look at their referring domains, pay attention to the number of do-follow referring domains they have, the quality of those domains. Look at their anchor text, look for obvious kind of like spam, Asian character anchor text is a good indication. It might have been an expired domain kind of used for something else in the past, stuff like that.
Yes, and I would say my personal one is definitely traffic. I love, again, Ahrefs might not be super accurate, but number one is if Google is blessing a site with rankings and traffic, at least personally, that's one of my favorites. And I would say, particularly if you're getting links on larger sites that cover multiple topics, I always look specifically if they're getting traffic to the topic that I'm targeting. So if you have a big news site, for example, or, there's a lot of these kind of sites that cover a bunch of topics. And, if you're wanting a link from a fitness site, like we always check that they actually have some traffic and relevant pages to that, so that Google have actually sort of given the seal of approval to those type of pages on their site, right? So, but traffic, I think for me is definitely the number one thing. And as I said earlier, because if we put a guest post on their site, if it's not going to get traffic because the site have no traffic generally, again, our experience is the value of the link is just so much less, right?
Related to that too, watching out for big recent dips in traffic, because that's a good indication of a recent either penalty or algorithmic update that negatively impacted the site.
Yeah. Got a website with 40,000 pages. Homepage got page authority of 35, but the main authority of only 8. And what do I need to do to improve the DR?
So this is a good situation where, go ahead and book a strategy call with me. I'd be happy to look at your website and give you a more detailed answer. My intuition is that your URL rating distribution is probably overwhelmingly low quality, low authority sites. And so you probably need to focus on just building more high authority sites links to your homepage. But I'd really need to look at your site and be able to give you a better answer. But my suspicion is if you focus on building authoritative, so probably like DR, 30 plus relevant homepage links, you'll see movement there.
Yeah, and I think personally for me as well, like in the beginning when we first started with SEO and so on, we were so busy just building links because we heard links was the end all be all, but really understanding the value of good links, it makes such a much bigger difference, right? I mean, there's no point in running around and getting a bunch of links that are DR nothing. Again, like the whole point is, and again, DR is still a vanity metric to some extent, but from a conceptual standpoint, right, a DR 50 links is worth, 20 DR 30s or probably more even, right? So a higher quality link is technically worth a lot more as long as you assume a similar relevance, right? So I think that's for us, that's what helped a lot with getting things moving, because when we just started not focusing so much on just quantity, but really look at the quality as well, right?
Yeah, DR is a non-linear scale. That's important to understand. So a website, in the 30s is exponentially more authoritative than a website in the 20s, and so on.
Yeah. Okay, the next one. Right, so that was also about languages. So running French sites, do you provide links to that? So you've kind of answered that already. Is building links to local sites the same strategy and the same things to look out for as building it for international sites?
No, the answer is no. And so again, like it depends what you mean when we say international. So when we think about like search terms in the US, there's a difference between national keywords and local keywords. And there's a difference between how Google treats those search terms, and they use different kind of like ranking factors. So if you're trying to rank a local keyword, a good way to tell that Google is treating it as a local keyword is you're getting like a map pack or, local services listings, which means that Google is placing the geographic proximity of the website to the searcher as a very high ranking factor, right? So it's a completely different, and then what becomes really important is helping Google see where you're located. And so it's really important citations aren't as important as they used to be. I think they still do help. Google My Business is really the most important citation. So having a good Google My Business profile that's optimized and focusing on building links that are building geographic relevance is very important. If we're targeting like a national domain, it becomes a lot more about topical relevance, domain authority, and then I would say international is probably similar. If we were building building links to a website that was outside the US, it really depends on exactly the service or the product you're trying to sell. There might be some of that geographic relevance at play, but certainly much less so.
Okay. The next one. I've just started a site 2 months ago and have a minimal budget. If you had to recommend a link type to get started with by myself, what would that be?
It's a good question. So in the world of SEO, you either have money or you have time, right? If you have time and not a lot of money, what I'd recommend is actually doing your own outreach. It's going to be the most effective kind of bang for your buck, especially if you don't have a lot of budget, because the reality is like links cost money. And if we're trying to, target a website or a keyword that's going to take, 300 referring domains to rank, and you can only afford one link a month, it's going to take you years to rank, if budget is your biggest constraint. So it really depends. So if you don't have any budget, I would say learn how to do outreach yourself. Follow the tips and tricks we talked about here. This is enough to kind of at least point you in the right direction, get you started. Get enough traction where you have enough revenue that you can then invest in SEO. If you have enough to invest in, a small amount of links per month, I would, again, so this goes back to the ROI question. And I really can't recommend checking out that other lecture I'm doing on Sunday strongly enough, because we really deep dive into this ROI question, which, as you're seeing, is really critical to really figuring out how you apply your link strategy. But figure out that ROI question, right? So what is the value of that traffic to you? And then work backwards from there. How much are you willing to invest to achieve that value? And one of the things you can do with a lower budget, so we talked about this with one of the example sites, is identify the low-hanging fruit. So what are the longer tail keywords that you can rank for with fewer links that are going to give you enough revenue to then rank for, you know, bigger keywords, bigger fish. So I would say learn how to do some manual outreach yourself, execute that on low volume keywords. I'm sorry, not low volume, low competition keywords. They can be low volume, it's great if they're not. Low competition keywords to build enough revenue to then invest in links to go after the higher competition keywords. So if you don't have any money, I would say shift your strategy. Don't worry about the keywords that are going to take a ton of links to rank for. Figure out what's the universe of keywords that I can rank for with a minimal investment, and then use the cash flow to then target more competitive keywords.
Perfect, Adam. I think we are out of time. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in again. Sorry for the little mishap with our dear Facebook feed. And yeah, Adam, thank you very, very much for your presentation and for answering all these questions. As Adam mentioned, please remember to check out in the sponsor section. Please remember to check out Outreach Mama. Some great offers. And again, Adam have volunteered a lot of his time to do sort of free strategy calls with people. So I highly recommend you taking him up on it. And yeah, that's it for me.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you, guys.